Hello again. Here we are, ready to discuss. This will be one of the shorter segments. The 1962 through 65 Dynapower sand wedges. The cycles were 62-63, and then there was 64, which is a standalone, and 65, which is a standalone. We'll cover all three of those in this segment. This is episode 5 out of 14, but these episodes are going to go more quickly now. We got a lot of information behind us already, and these future episodes really build on the extensive information that was set out as a background. These three model years are very heavy, they're wide, and they have high bounce. It was the first year of the Dynapowers, and a red rubber plug in the sole covering the drill through hole. Shafts were no longer pinned, and there were loving cups stamped at each end of the grooves on the club face. Let's take the 62-63 Dynapowered first. That's right here. It's a I always have trouble holding it up so the reflection doesn't interfere too badly from the lights. Maybe that's pretty good right there. Wilson staff with staff appearing in red. You got the crest in a circle. Wilson has the low L, not the tall L like earlier. The sole is fairly wide. Says fluid feel, has the red plug. No pinned shaft. It's gone away from the yellow shaft band that was it's the only yellow shaft band that was found in 60-61, and we are now into the so-called Staff Pro shafts, and I think those may have begun in 61. I should have pointed that out, but I think my other ones didn't have shaft band. But here's a Staff Pro shaft band. Marked on the shaft band is the flex of the club. This happens to have an R in a circle standing for regular as opposed to stiff, or X for extra stiff, or L for ladies. So this is unusually nice. It's got the original leather grip. I haven't ripped that off. I own several copies of the 62-63. Some others I've ripped the grips off. Again, you've got the dual flags on the end cap, and this is what's notable here is it's a quarter inch shorter than the sand wedges in other years. Not sure why they decided to go with a quarter inch shorter. They must have had a theory behind that. It's got high bounce, very, very high bounce. You can sort of see what I'm talking about here. You see a lot of slant between the leading edge and the trailing edge. It's an E5 heavy. It's heavy, and then I've got the ladies version here. I don't own a lot of ladies versions, but I happen to have one for this year, and it's the you can see that everything's the same, but it says Patty Berg, a very famous woman's golfer, and it's the same on the bottom. It's got a lighter, Patty Berg has a lighter swing weight than it's got a D6, which is still heavier than today's sand wedges, but so today's sand wedges are actually lighter than the women's or the ladies' sand wedges from the 60s, which is kind of an interesting idea. But it again, a very nice club. Got the Staff Pro shaft band, and it's got the L, which I'm sure you can't see on the shaft band. L for ladies flex. You know, they flex more than the men's did. You know, great club. You'll notice, I want to go back to the sand wedge, you'll notice that staff has the word staff, the two F's have long legs hanging down. And now, just interesting, Alan Shepard, an astronaut, I think on Apollo 14, if I remember right, took a, maybe you recall this, some of us who are a bit older remember it or remember hearing about it. He took a golf club to the moon and hit a golf ball while on the moon. What did he take with him? He took a 62-63 Dyna-powered 6-iron with him, with a shaft that disassembled, that broke down into smaller pieces, you know, 10 inches a foot, whatever, and then he screw it back together when he got on the moon. He, I guess, smuggled the story is he had to do that to smuggle it onto the spacecraft. But anyway, Wilson gives you an idea of the status of Wilson's staff. You know, I think that was a 71 space flight, and you know, here he is. He's taking a 62-63, which has been modified up to the moon with him. So anyway, the 64 Dynapower we will talk about next. It's one of my favorites. It has wonderful touch. You know, I've sometimes taken all of my clubs, not all of them, but you know, a number of them, and kind of done at the chipping green, or you know, the pitching green. I've had contests between the different model years, and I remember that this one did extremely well. It's got Dynapower in small black letters, micro letters. That's what's notable. The staff, the F's have short legs again, or you know, the same length, and the staff is in gold. There's a lot more gold on this one. Usually they had a lot of red. When this was newer, the loving cups on either side had gold fill in them. And you know, again, we've got the staff shaft band with an R regular flex. Wonderful club, one of my favorites of all time. It's a somewhat lighter. It's an EO, and I have two copies. The other one is an E2 swing weight, high bounce. It's a little bit more expensive because it was only made for 1 year. And some of the wedges were made for as many as 3 years, and those are cheaper. They're just, you know, easier to find. But the 64 was a standalone year, and this is the year again. In the very first session, I think I showed that I had copies of all 4 of their Dyna-powered line in 64: pitching wedge, dual wedge, triple duty wedge, and sand wedge. I'm pleased to have all 4, and I think it's maybe the only year where I have all 4 of the lineup. And then we come to the 65 sand wedge, and I had to go out to the car just now to get this out of my golf bag. I carry this one. It's got Wilson staff underlined. You can see the underlining, and that only shows up in the 65. We've got, you know, conventional sole. It's got huge bounce. It's probably, you know, like 15 degrees of bounce, and I picked it out because out here in the Seattle area it's been very wet lately, and so I wanted a lot of bounce, and this is the one I picked. I could have picked others. There are other fine ones, and you know, it's a, you know, super club with swing weight of E6. It's a heavy one, you know, E6, and got a sharp trailing edge. If you can see it, the trailing edge is quite Some of them have, like the 64 has a rounded trailing edge. This has a sharp trailing edge. I'm not completely sure what that does. It's not something I really take into account. I'll just remark on it for whatever it's worth. I want to go back to the Patty Berg wedge. I want to talk a little bit about Wilson's line of women's clubs. Wilson, even in the 30s, had on its staff, it had women. Helen Hicks being very prominent. She was a national champion, and they had a sand wedge named Helen Hicks National Champ, and this is the Miss Helen that Lee Trevino refers to. He had in his bag a women's sand wedge from 1932, 33, 34. It was a Helen Hicks, and somewhat lighter than the men's, as was typically the case. But highly regarded, and Wilson had a lot of women on its among its pros, and sold a lot of women's clubs. I don't have a lot of them. I have another one that's from, I don't know, 1948 or something, and it has an L stamped on it, and you'll see that stamped L on some of those sand irons. They call them sand irons in 48. And you see people on eBay saying, this is a lob wedge. Well, it had 57 degrees. I suppose it's close to being a lob wedge, but the L stands not for lob, but for ladies. I don't think back then they called anything a lob wedge. So anyway, there's your 65, 62 through 65, three different versions. And our next segment will go on to discuss the 66 and 67 68s, which are notable for having swing weights that and bounce that vary even within the year, making it a little more complicated to buy one of those, because you probably don't know exactly what you're getting, but they're fairly common and they're underpriced really. So say that you buy one and you wanted high bounce and you got lower bounce, well, you haven't broken the bank on your first purchase. So with that, I'll sign off. Thank you again for tuning in. Look for our next episode. We're going to do 14 of these, and we're at number 5 so far, but we're going to blast through them. They're going to go quicker as we proceed through the episodes. Thanks again. Bye.